Have you ever walked into a room and felt like all eyes were on you, not because of what you were wearing or saying, but simply because of your presence? Maybe people seem uncomfortable when you speak your truth, or they back away when you hold firm to your values. You're not being rude. You're not being cold. You're just being you. And sometimes that's more powerful than people are ready to handle. What if I told you that your energy, your aura, isn't just noticeable, it's disruptive, and not in a negative way, in a way that wakes people up, stirs their comfort zones, and makes them question the spaces where they've settled for less. This isn't about ego, it's about impact. Some auras speak louder than words ever could. They walk into a room and shift the temperature. They call people to be real, to rise up, or to step back. And that kind of presence, it's rare, it's sacred, but it also comes with resistance, because not everyone is ready for what your energy reflects. Authenticity, boundaries, self-respect, emotional depth. When your aura is strong, it doesn't just introduce you, it challenges them. And that can disturb people who live behind masks, who rely on control, or who haven't yet stepped into their own power. But here's the truth. Your job is not to shrink so others feel safe. Your job is to stand in your light and let the ones who are meant for your energy find their way to it. When your aura is truly powerful, you'll notice something subtle but undeniable. People tend to feel exposed or vulnerable around you, not because you say something offensive or because you overstep boundaries, but because your energy naturally calls for honesty. It invites people to step out from behind the personas they've spent years perfecting. And here's the thing, most people don't even realize how much they've been hiding until they're around someone who isn't. There's something deeply disarming about authenticity. It doesn't scream or demand attention, but it sits still and listens. It sees, and when you're someone who carries that kind of presence, who has done enough inner work to be comfortable in your own skin, you naturally shine a light on what others are avoiding. This isn't about being judgmental or trying to fix anyone. It's about the quiet confidence that comes from knowing yourself. And that kind of energy can feel like an X-ray to those who haven't faced themselves yet. In social settings, you may notice people suddenly becoming self-conscious or overly chatty, trying to fill the silence. Others might withdraw or even act defensively. That's not a reflection of something you've done wrong. It's a reflection of how rare your presence is. You don't play the game of masks, and that makes people second guess the one they're wearing. Your calm can feel loud. Your eye contact, even if brief, can feel but what's really happening is that people sense the emotional clarity you bring, and that clarity can be uncomfortable for those still living in confusion. You'll often see this dynamic in work environments, in friendships, even in family gatherings. Someone with a strong aura doesn't have to say much. Just walking into a room changes the emotional temperature. Conversations might become more genuine, or conversely, more strained. People might open up to you surprisingly quickly, sharing stories or emotions they haven't spoken out loud in years. Or they might avoid you because something about your presence feels too honest, too raw, too real. The key to understanding this isn't to shrink yourself or feel like you need to apologize for your energy. It's to recognize that being someone who makes others feel vulnerable is not a flaw. It's a reflection of your emotional depth. You've done the uncomfortable work of facing your own truths, and because of that, you now exist as an invitation. You invite honesty. You invite reflection. You invite others to meet you on a deeper level. But not everyone is ready for that invitation. And that's okay. Some people will misunderstand your energy. Some will be drawn to it, and some will be quietly transformed by it long after the interaction ends. Your only job is to keep showing up as you are, knowing that your light doesn't just illuminate rooms, it also casts shadows. And that's what makes it so powerful. You walk into a room and without saying a word, something changes. It's subtle, almost unspoken. People might pause mid-sentence, glance over, or suddenly become more aware of themselves. You're not loud, you're not flashy, but your presence has a gravity to it. This isn't about ego or dominance. It's about energetic influence. The energy you carry within yourself, your self-awareness, your emotional depth, your quiet confidence shifts the collective mood, even if only slightly. That's what a powerful aura does. It speaks without needing a voice. This shift isn't always welcomed. For some, your energy brings clarity, even calm. For others, it stirs discomfort, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence invites a kind of honesty that not everyone is ready to meet. When you are fully embodied, when your insides match your outsides, it creates a kind of transparency that people can feel. It's like holding up a mirror that reflects more than just the surface. Those who are used to blending in, hiding parts of themselves, or surviving inauthentically might not know how to receive someone who radiates alignment. Your ability to hold space, to simply be without performing or shrinking, is disruptive in the best way. It breaks patterns. Most rooms are filled with unspoken dynamics. Who's trying to prove what? Who's trying to belong? Who's keeping their real selves hidden? When you show up aligned, those dynamics shift. You're not playing the same game, and that causes others to reevaluate their role in the room, even if unconsciously. It's not uncommon for people to misinterpret this as arrogance or aloofness, simply because they don't have a category for someone who doesn't need approval to feel valid. Energetic presence also communicates boundaries. Without saying anything, you tell people what is and isn't acceptable in your space. You show that you take yourself seriously and that you'll take them seriously too. That's rare. And that kind of respect, that unspoken invitation to meet you at a deeper level, can be deeply moving for those who are ready and deeply unsettling for those who are not. Some people may pull away from you, not because they dislike you, but because being near you brings up feelings they're not prepared to face. That's not your fault. You're not responsible for how others receive your energy, but it is important to remain compassionate. Power without compassion is oppressive. Power with compassion is transformative. When your aura is strong, you have an opportunity not just to disturb, but to invite. You can be the reminder that presence matters, that truth is healing, and that showing up fully is still possible in a world that often asks us to hide, to intimidate people without trying. And that can be a confusing experience, especially when your intention is never to overpower or dominate. But intimidation isn't always about what you do. Sometimes it's about what you don't do. You don't shrink. You don't play small to make others comfortable. You don't dilute your truth to maintain harmony. And while that might seem like a quiet act of self-respect to you, to others, it can feel like a challenge to the way they've learned to navigate the world. When someone is deeply rooted in who they are, when they've done the work of becoming emotionally resilient, self-aware, and grounded, their presence radiates something different. It's calm but powerful. It's warm but firm. It doesn't seek permission to exist. And for people who are still entangled in people-pleasing, who are used to loudness as a sign of strength, or who equate dominance with control, your kind of energy is disruptive. Not in a harmful way, but in a revealing way. Without saying a word, you remind others of what they've avoided. Maybe they've avoided vulnerability, avoided honesty, or avoided setting boundaries. And suddenly, here you are, modeling all of those things with grace and without apology. That's intimidating. Not because you've made it so, but because you've become fluent in something many are still struggling to understand. You're not intimidating because you're mean. You're intimidating because you're clear. And clarity is rare. Clarity is powerful. Clarity doesn't beg to be accepted. It simply exists unapologetically. And when someone shows up with that kind of clarity, It forces people to confront their own confusion, their own internal chaos. Not everyone is ready for that confrontation. This kind of intimidation isn't aggressive, it's assertive in the most grounded way. It's the kind that holds space without overstepping. It doesn't need to raise its voice because its presence is enough. It doesn't control others. It just refuses to be controlled. And that silent refusal, it speaks volumes. So when people recoil, misunderstand you, or even try to bring you down a notch, it's not always a reflection of something wrong with you. Often it's a reflection of something unresolved within them. That's not your burden to carry, but it is something to recognize, especially if you've ever wondered why people sometimes keep their distance, hesitate around you, or label you as too much, when all you're doing is being whole. The goal isn't to dim your light to make others more comfortable. The goal is to keep shining with compassion and humility, knowing that your presence may shake some foundations. But that's often how growth begins. You attract both admiration and envy, and that duality can be confusing, even painful at times. A powerful aura isn't just something people notice, it's something they feel. It doesn't whisper, it resonates. It's a quiet kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. And for many people, that's deeply magnetic. They're drawn to your energy because it's rare, it's rooted, it's not performative. You don't seek approval or applause. And ironically, that's what makes you stand out. But that same authenticity that makes people admire you can also trigger something in others. It can make them feel like they're lacking something. Not because you're trying to compete or make them feel small. You're not. Your presence simply holds up a mirror. It reflects what they're not yet willing to see in themselves. And sometimes that reflection is hard to look at. So instead of working through that discomfort, some people project envy or resentment toward you. They might question your motives, doubt your intentions, or misinterpret your confidence as arrogance, not because it is, but because their own insecurities can't make sense of it. We often talk about the light people carry, but we don't talk enough about how light can be disruptive, not because it's dangerous, but because it reveals. A powerful aura doesn't just light up a room, it reveals the shadows in it. And when that happens, people react. Some are inspired. They see your energy as something to aspire to. They want to grow, to match that vibration, to elevate themselves. But others may pull away, or worse, try to dim your light. Because when you show up in your full truth, it reminds them of the truth they've been avoiding. It challenges their comfort zone. This experience isn't about ego. It's not about being better than anyone. It's about the simple fact that when you live with integrity, groundedness, and a deep sense of self, you disrupt the systems that thrive on conformity, on silence, on self-doubt. Your presence alone becomes a disruption to emotional patterns that were never designed for honesty or self-assurance. That's why you'll notice a mix of reactions from people. Some will lean in, hungry to learn how you got there. Others will push back, uncomfortable with how you got there without needing their approval. Understanding this dynamic can be both freeing and heartbreaking. It's not easy knowing that just being yourself might unsettle others, but it's also a reminder of how deeply your presence matters. You are not responsible for how others choose to respond to your authenticity. You're responsible for staying aligned with it. And when admiration and envy show up in the same space, know that it's not a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of what you illuminate. When you carry a powerful aura, there's something profoundly different about the way you communicate. You don't engage in surface level chatter for the sake of filling silence. You crave depth. You crave connection, and you crave meaning. That doesn't mean you can't hold lighthearted conversations or enjoy humor, but there's a part of you that feels unfulfilled when dialogue doesn't touch something real. You're not interested in pleasing others by agreeing with things you don't believe in. You don't nod along just to avoid awkwardness. You'd rather sit in silence than fake engagement. This deep orientation toward truth and connection can be unsettling for people who aren't used to being seen, really seen. Because when someone with a powerful aura speaks with depth, it brings a certain kind of intensity. It's not forced. It's not loud. It's not even about dominating the conversation. It's about presence. It's about intention. And when your words carry weight, they tend to ripple through others in a way that demands reflection. People who are used to hiding behind facades or controlling conversations with distractions may find themselves uncomfortable in your company. Not because you call them out directly, but because your very way of being calls something forward in them. You might ask thoughtful questions that stop people in their tracks, or you might make simple observations that gently pull the veil off something they weren't ready to face. It's not that you're trying to challenge anyone, you're just being honest. You're being real. And for those who aren't grounded in their own truth, that can feel like a threat. You've probably noticed how some people avoid eye contact with you, or how conversations take a strange turn when you gently shift towards something more meaningful. Maybe someone was gossiping, and instead of joining in, you redirected with curiosity or compassion. That one moment, that choice not to engage in something shallow, can change the entire dynamic of the room. People might suddenly feel exposed, defensive, or unsure how to respond. Your depth is not aggressive, but it has gravity. And gravity pulls things in. Speaking with depth also means you don't need to say much to say a lot. Your words tend to be intentional. Your silence isn't empty. It holds space. And people notice that. Some are drawn to it. They feel safe. Others feel challenged. Not by you, but by what rises in them when they can't hide behind pretense. In a world that often rewards performance over presence, your way of communicating with groundedness, clarity, and heart can feel both healing and unsettling. It's a gift, but like many gifts, not everyone knows how to receive it. When your aura is powerful, it doesn't just exist quietly. It reflects, it reveals, and sometimes it disrupts. One of the most misunderstood experiences people with strong energy often face is that others project their insecurities onto them. It's rarely intentional, and it's almost never spoken out loud, but it happens, and it can feel heavy. Here's what that might look like. You walk into a room, grounded in who you are. You're not trying to impress anyone, you're simply present. Someone else, perhaps struggling with self-doubt or unresolved fears, immediately feels threatened, not because of anything you've done, but because of what you represent. Your steadiness becomes a contrast to their inner instability, and rather than confronting that discomfort internally, it gets projected outward. You might be labeled as intimidating, arrogant, too much, or even fake, simply because your energy doesn't match the narrative they've created about themselves or others. This process is deeply psychological. Projection is a defense mechanism. It allows individuals to avoid facing aspects of themselves they don't want to acknowledge. If someone is insecure and you carry yourself with quiet confidence, their discomfort grows, not because you're being unkind, but because your presence brings up what they haven't healed. You become a symbol of what they wish they had or what they fear they can't become. This is especially common when you're emotionally intelligent and carry yourself with intention. People who haven't done inner work can misinterpret self-awareness as superiority. If you're able to sit in silence, to speak with clarity, to say no without over-explaining, someone else might interpret that as being aloof or dismissive. In truth, it's often the opposite. You've done the emotional work to not need approval, and that kind of wholeness can be confronting for those who haven't. In relationships, whether personal or professional, this dynamic can create tension. You may find that certain people keep picking fights with you, doubting your intentions, or accusing you of things that don't resonate with your character. That's the projection talking. They're not really reacting to you. They're reacting to the part of themselves they haven't made peace with. It's not your job to shrink yourself to make others feel comfortable, but it is helpful to understand what's really happening beneath the surface. Compassion becomes a powerful tool here, not just for others, but for yourself. When you know your presence can stir discomfort, you stop taking people's reactions personally. You start to see it for what it is, a reflection of their story, not a verdict on your truth. Holding space for that awareness without internalizing other people's projections requires emotional boundaries, patience, and self-trust. But when you can navigate this with grace, your aura doesn't just remain powerful, it becomes healing, even for those who don't understand it yet. You're often misunderstood, and it's not because you're unclear or inconsistent. It's because your presence carries a kind of stillness that doesn't fit into the emotional noise many people are used to. You're calm in chaos. You don't overshare to seek approval. You don't rush to fill silences. You don't engage in performative expressions of emotion. And for some, that feels unfamiliar, even threatening. When someone is deeply grounded, they exude a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. They don't need to explain every decision or justify their emotions. That kind of presence doesn't fit the usual social scripts, and so people start projecting. They may interpret your silence as judgment, your composure as arrogance, your emotional restraint as detachment. And all of that misunderstanding has more to do with them than with you. The truth is, when you're deeply connected to yourself, you stop performing. And when you stop performing, you become unpredictable to people who rely on others playing familiar roles. They don't know what to do with someone who's not playing along. If they're used to people pleasers, your boundaries seem rude. If they're used to oversharers, your privacy seems cold. If they're used to emotional reactivity, your stability seems robotic. But it's not. It's emotional maturity, it's internal safety, and it can make others feel unsteady. Being misunderstood can be lonely, especially when you value connection. But here's the paradox. Your ability to remain centered even when others misread you is what makes your aura powerful in the first place. You don't bend to be liked. You don't shrink to make others comfortable. And that means you're offering a rare example of what self-trust looks like in real time. This misunderstanding can show up in subtle ways, like people assuming you're aloof, when really you're just observing. Or they may say you think you're better than them, when in fact, you're simply comfortable being quiet. Sometimes people might test you just to get a reaction because they're not sure how else to connect. But the more you try to be understood by everyone, the more you'll dilute the very energy that makes you magnetic in the first place. The real work lies in staying kind without over-explaining, remaining open without compromising your boundaries, and continuing to show up in your fullness even when others don't know what to make of it, because being misunderstood is not a reflection of your failure to connect. It's often a reflection of someone else's discomfort with authenticity. Keep being real, let them catch up. You don't crave validation, and that alone sets you apart in a world that's often obsessed with likes, comments, applause, and approval. When someone carries a powerful aura, it's usually because their self-worth is deeply rooted within, not hanging on the next compliment or shaken by the slightest criticism. There's a difference between being open to feedback and being dependent on validation. When you've done the inner work, when you've learned to trust yourself, you no longer feel the need to convince others of your value. And when that's your reality, it can disrupt the comfort zones of those who still seek external confirmation for every step they take. People who don't understand this kind of quiet confidence might label it as arrogance or detachment, but it's neither. It's simply emotional independence. This can be deeply unsettling for individuals who are still operating from a space where approval equals worth. If someone's used to defining their value through others, whether it's through performance, people-pleasing, or praise, your ability to stand tall without needing any of that might feel threatening. It's not that you're trying to prove anything, you're just being. And that being carries a kind of integrity that doesn't bend for applause. In conversations, this shows up in subtle ways. You're not swayed by flattery, nor are you crushed by indifference. You listen, but you don't absorb every opinion as truth. That kind of balance often makes people pause. It makes them question why they care so much about being liked, why they filter themselves, why they stay small to fit in. And sometimes, instead of reflecting inward, they'll misinterpret your self-assurance as being aloof or intimidating. The truth is, when someone doesn't seek validation, they walk into rooms differently. They speak with clarity, not to impress, but to connect. They show up with presence, not to perform, but to participate. And when that energy enters a space that's used to validation-seeking behavior, it unsettles the norm. But here's what's fascinating. That kind of disruption, while uncomfortable, is also where growth begins. When someone stands firmly in their worth, they become a permission slip for others to do the same. It's not about ego. It's about knowing who you are and no longer outsourcing that identity to the world. And while that might disturb others at first, it also plants seeds of curiosity, seeds of courage, seeds of something deeper than approval, self-acceptance. That's the quiet power of not needing validation. It liberates not just you, but everyone watching. Setting strong boundaries without guilt is a hallmark of a powerful aura. It reflects a deep understanding of one's emotional, mental, and even spiritual needs. When someone has done the inner work to identify what they will and will not allow in their space, they radiate a quiet confidence. But that clarity can be unsettling to others, especially those who are used to overstepping, controlling, or being met with compliance. When you uphold your boundaries without drama or apology, you disrupt the social script many people are used to. They might call it cold, distant, or even selfish, not because it truly is, but because it challenges their comfort zone. People who haven't cultivated emotional boundaries themselves often take offense when others enforce theirs. It triggers something in them. It makes them question their own ability to say no, to speak up, to advocate for themselves. And that discomfort, it doesn't sit quietly. It often comes out sideways in judgment, gossip, passive aggressiveness, or isolation. But someone with a powerful aura doesn't cave to that pressure. Instead, they stay rooted. They understand that saying no to someone else is often saying yes to themselves. And they don't need to explain that truth to everyone. When you protect your time, energy, and emotional capacity, you're not creating distance, you're creating alignment. Alignment with your values, alignment with your needs. You're telling the world, I am responsible for my well-being and I honor it. That kind of self-respect radiates and it teaches others how to treat you. But it also shines a light on those who benefit from your lack of boundaries. And they don't always like what they see. You may find that some people pull away, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your clarity exposes their chaos. This kind of strength isn't about building walls. It's about creating doors that only open when it's safe, healthy, and mutually respectful. It's about trusting yourself to make decisions that might be unpopular, but are absolutely necessary. And while others might misread your assertiveness as rejection, what you're really doing is practicing self-trust and emotional maturity. That's not cold. That's wise. There's something incredibly grounding about knowing you don't have to bend to be loved. You don't have to please to be accepted. You don't have to over-explain to be understood. People with powerful auras don't just believe this, they embody it. And while it can disturb others at first, it also offers them an invitation to grow, to reflect, to build their own boundaries, not as a defense mechanism, but as a path to emotional health. In a world that often rewards overextension and burnout, choosing to protect your peace is a revolutionary act. When you possess a powerful aura, it has the unique ability to make others question their own truth, often in ways they don't fully understand. This happens not because you're actively trying to challenge them, but because of your own deep authenticity. You live in alignment with your values, which naturally invites others to confront their own beliefs, actions, and intentions. This is something people don't always know how to process, and it can make them feel uneasy. The discomfort comes from the fact that your presence doesn't allow people to hide from themselves. In a world where many are constantly trying to fit in, to go unnoticed, or to conform to social expectations, your unwavering authenticity becomes a kind of mirror. And mirrors have a tendency to reflect things we may not be ready to face. People may be forced to examine their choices, their compromises, or even their lack of self-awareness. Your energy, your words, and your actions can be a quiet but powerful catalyst for others to look inward. The truth is that not everyone is ready to confront themselves. Many people are comfortable in their own version of reality, and the vulnerability of self-reflection isn't something they always seek. When they come across someone whose aura exudes realness, it can feel like an invitation to dive into uncomfortable introspection. This can stir up their own fears, insecurities, or even unresolved trauma. Your authenticity may not only reveal their truths to them, but also shine a light on the places they've been avoiding. As a result, they may become defensive or even resentful of your presence, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've unintentionally pushed them into a space where they have to face the discomfort of change. People will often react in different ways when confronted with this kind of energy. Some may feel admiration or inspiration. Others may try to distance themselves or retreat into judgment. This is because your presence forces them to ask hard questions. Why am I not living up to my own potential? Why am I hiding parts of myself? This questioning, although it can lead to profound growth, is inherently unsettling. It requires the courage to dismantle old patterns and face things that may have been buried for years. But here's the paradox. When you challenge others with your truth, you're not doing it with malice or a desire to push them into discomfort. Your aura simply has that effect. It's the result of you living fully in your own skin, being deeply connected to your sense of self, and embracing your own imperfections. And this authenticity creates a ripple effect that prompts others to examine their own lives. It's important to remember that this process isn't always conscious. Many people won't articulate why they feel uneasy around you or why your presence shifts the atmosphere. They may not even realize that what they're experiencing is a reaction to their own self-reflection. Ultimately, your aura doesn't just disturb others because it's powerful. It disturbs them because it dares to ask them to look deeper into their own lives. When we encounter someone who lives unapologetically true to themselves, we often have to face the parts of ourselves that we've been avoiding. And that's not an easy thing to do. But for those willing to engage in that kind of self-examination, it can lead to profound growth. It's this kind of energy that has the potential to transform not just your life, but the lives of others around you in ways they may not even realize yet. There's something quietly magnetic about individuals who, without any overt effort, naturally assume leadership. It's not always about authority or dominance. It's more about a deep sense of self-awareness and emotional intelligence that others can't help but notice. When you walk into a room, you may not always want to lead, but your energy signals that you have a clear vision and a strong sense of direction. This is a characteristic that often makes others look to you for guidance, even when you haven't said a word. Leadership in this sense isn't about taking charge in a loud or forceful way. It's about embodying a sense of clarity and purpose that inspires others to follow your lead. People with this energy are often those who have done the inner work. They know themselves deeply and they're grounded in their values and beliefs. This inner strength makes them naturally authoritative, not because they have to assert their power, but because their presence commands attention. There's something about them that makes people instinctively know they can trust them to steer the group in the right direction. One of the most profound aspects of this type of leadership is the calm confidence that comes with it. They don't have to prove themselves. They don't need to fight for their position or power. Instead, they simply show up and speak their truth. And because of that, people listen. This quiet authority can often be misinterpreted by others as intimidating or overwhelming, but it's really the result of the clear, grounded energy they emit. But it's not always easy to be this kind of leader. It often comes with a certain level of responsibility that can feel heavy. When you're someone others look to for direction, there's an expectation to not only guide, but to also carry the weight of the group's energy. It can be exhausting at times, especially when you have to be the one to keep things balanced and harmonious. And because others see your strength, they may expect you to always have the answers or to always know what's best, which can feel isolating. Yet this form of leadership is also an invitation for growth, both for the leader and for those around them. People are drawn to this energy because it offers them a chance to evolve, to step up, and to find their own sense of the power of this kind of leadership is not about making others dependent on you, but about helping them discover their own potential. When you walk into a room and automatically take on a leadership role, it's because your energy says, I believe in myself and I believe in you. It's about cultivating an environment where others can find their own sense of purpose and trust their own instincts. And yet it can also be unsettling for those who are not ready for it. Some people are so uncomfortable with this natural authority that they will try to downplay your presence or undermine your influence. They may project their insecurities onto you, unable to handle the strength and clarity you bring to the table. But your leadership isn't a challenge to them. It's a mirror reflecting their own lack of confidence or self-assurance. Being a natural leader in this way requires a deep understanding of yourself and the space you take up. It's about embracing the responsibility without feeling burdened, owning your power without exploiting it. Your aura of leadership doesn't seek approval or validation. It simply exists. A quiet force of calm energy, offering guidance to those who need it most. Being emotionally aware and not engaging in drama is one of the most profound signs of a powerful aura, and it often has a significant impact on the dynamics of any space you enter. This particular trait, while incredibly grounding for the individual who possesses it, can stir discomfort in others because it challenges their own emotional patterns. Drama thrives in chaos, in ambiguity, in manipulation of emotions, and in keeping people off balance. Those who feed into it are often unsure of themselves, craving constant validation, or seeking to project a version of themselves that they believe others will accept. However, when someone walks into a room with a calm, centered presence and refuses to participate in the emotional chaos around them, it has the potential to disrupt the flow of energy in the room. People who aren't emotionally aware or who tend to indulge in dramatic behavior are often uncomfortable when they encounter someone who doesn't engage with their emotional volatility. The person who refuses to get caught in the drama doesn't meet the expectations that others may have for how they should react to a situation. Instead of feeding the tension or responding to it with emotional outbursts or exaggerated reactions, they maintain an inner sense of peace and emotional balance. This can make others feel unsettled because their usual tools for triggering or manipulating emotions don't work on this person. There's a certain power that comes with emotional awareness. It's the ability to observe a situation without getting swept up in it. Emotional awareness means being deeply in tune with one's own feelings, recognizing the impact emotions have on thoughts and actions, and choosing responses that are aligned with one's values rather than reacting impulsively to external pressures. This level of self-regulation can be difficult for others to understand, especially if they've never developed this same level of emotional maturity. When you don't engage in drama, you become a disruptor, but not in the way some might assume. You're not causing chaos, you're eliminating it. You're not contributing to the emotional confusion in a room, you're clearing the air. And while this can bring clarity and peace to those who are ready to embrace it, it can also create discomfort in those who prefer the status quo of emotional instability. People may feel threatened by your ability to remain unshaken because they fear that your emotional steadiness reflects a lack of empathy, or they may interpret it as indifference to their struggles. The truth, however, is that refusing to indulge in emotional drama is often the most compassionate thing a person can do. It allows others the space to confront their own emotional patterns without interference, and it offers a reminder that emotional chaos is not the only way to engage with life. Moreover, emotional awareness and the decision not to engage in drama is a powerful form of self-care. It protects the individual from burnout, unnecessary stress, and unhealthy emotional entanglements. It requires a significant level of self-assurance, as the person who refrains from drama understands their own worth and isn't swayed by the emotional tides of others. This person is emotionally stable enough to recognize that they cannot save or fix everyone, and that their role isn't to participate in every emotional fluctuation that others create. In a world that often equates heightened emotional reactions with authenticity or passion, not engaging in drama can be misunderstood as coldness, but in reality, it is a sign of profound emotional intelligence. It's a recognition that emotions are not something to be manipulated or used for control, but rather something to be honored and observed. When someone maintains their emotional integrity and refuses to engage in drama, they are not just protecting their own peace, they are also inviting others to rise to the same level of emotional awareness. There's a unique power in the ability to maintain emotional awareness without getting swept up in drama. It's not about being indifferent or detached. Rather, it's a conscious choice to stay grounded in your own emotions, even when external situations might push you to react. This can make others feel unsettled because in a world where drama often feels connection, your refusal to engage in it is a silent but clear message. When you don't react emotionally to the ups and downs around you, you allow others to see themselves more clearly. This can be disorienting for those who are used to living in a state of heightened emotional turbulence. They may find themselves questioning why you aren't participating in the chaos or feeling the same intense emotions they do. For some, this might trigger a sense of inadequacy or discomfort. It's not that they're judging you, but rather your emotional steadiness highlights their own uncertainty or emotional dependence. At its core, this type of emotional awareness is deeply empowering. It comes from a place of emotional intelligence and self-regulation, where you have learned to navigate your inner world and respond to external circumstances with thoughtfulness rather than impulse. It's not about repressing emotions, but about choosing how to express and manage them. This doesn't mean that you're unaffected by what's happening around you. It simply means that you recognize the difference between reacting from a place of unconscious emotion and responding with intention and clarity. You've learned to pause, breathe, and center yourself before acting. This emotional maturity creates a sense of peace that can be both attractive and intimidating to others. People might not understand your ability to maintain that calm. They may assume that you don't care or that you're somehow disengaged from the situation. But in reality, it's the opposite. Your emotional awareness is actually a sign of deep care and connection to your own truth. You've reached a place where you no longer feel the need to validate your emotions through drama or external validation. Instead, you trust your internal compass, and that becomes a model for others, whether they are ready to acknowledge it or not. When you refuse to engage in drama, You subtly show others that they don't have to either. You provide a space for those around you to step back from the noise and reflect on their own feelings. However, this often comes with a cost. People who are uncomfortable with their own emotional instability may find your groundedness threatening. They might project their own unresolved emotions onto you, accusing you of being detached, cold, or indifferent, even though that's far from your truth. It's just that your emotional clarity invites them to examine their own struggles, which isn't always a comfortable process. This dynamic is particularly strong in environments where emotional intensity is seen as a sign of involvement or caring. When you choose not to participate in that drama, you create a ripple effect that challenges the norms of emotional expression around you. But this challenge isn't a threat to your peace. Instead, it's a reflection of how your emotional awareness can disturb the status quo and call others to face their own emotional landscapes. It's not about changing them. It's about allowing them the space to change themselves, should they choose to. When your aura carries that kind of weight, when it speaks even before you do, it's not something to hide, suppress, or apologize for. It's something to understand, to honor, and to steward with care. The discomfort others feel in your presence isn't a reflection of something wrong with you. It's often a sign that you're living in alignment, and that alignment creates contrast. It reveals what others may not be ready to face within themselves. The strength of your aura is not about being dominant or overpowering. It's about being grounded in who you are. It's about showing up fully without pretending, without shrinking, without needing to make yourself more palatable for the comfort of others. And yes, it can disturb people, but disturbance is part of transformation. Growth never happens in perfect comfort. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply exist as your full self and allow that presence to speak louder than any words ever could. So keep holding your boundaries. Keep choosing truth over ease. Keep showing up in ways that challenge, that inspire, and yes, even unsettle. Because a powerful aura isn't here to blend in. It's here to illuminate.